Clash in Paris was billed as Roman Reigns' moment to remind the world why he is the tribal chief, the face of an empire, and the standard bearer of WWE. The match against Bron Breakker promised fireworks, but few expected it to descend into chaos that would send shockwaves across the wrestling landscape. The final spear, delivered with crushing force, wasn't just another move. It was the breaking point that silenced an arena of 20,000 fans. Roman clutched his ribs, the referee threw up the signal, and medical staff rushed in. The sight of Reigns being stretchered out while Jey Uso tried to steady his own emotions was one that no fan, no peer, and no executive could shake. For years, Roman had been the immovable object at the top of the card, but in that moment, he was fragile, human, and vulnerable. The Paris crowd watched in stunned silence, realizing they had just witnessed not only the abrupt end of a match, but perhaps the start of something larger, a chapter that would redefine alliances, rivalries, and the very culture of WWE. Jey Uso's loyalty tested. Jey Uso was the first man to Roman's side. Whatever fractures the bloodline had endured in recent months, arguments, betrayals, shifting loyalties, faded in that instant. Jey's face said it all: fear for his cousin's health, anger at what had unfolded, and helplessness at not being able to stop it. For Jey, this wasn't about storylines or angles. This was about family, and family has always been the heartbeat of his career. When Roman was wheeled through the backstage corridors, Jey never left his side, walking beside the stretcher, clasping Roman's hand and whispering reassurances only Roman could hear. The bond between them transcended championship gold and television time. It was blood, heritage, and shared history. In that moment, Jey embodied the very essence of Samoan wrestling culture. Loyalty above all else, but little did anyone know, Jey's vigil at the hospital would intersect with an even more shocking reunion, one that would bring a rival into the fold. Enter CM Punk hours. After the match, the quiet outside a Paris hospital was broken by the sight of a figure few fans expected to see in this context. CM Punk. Known for his rebellious streak, sharp words, and history of clashing with Roman Reigns, Punk arriving at the hospital raised immediate questions. What was he doing there? Why had he chosen this moment? And perhaps most importantly, who was walking beside him? To the disbelief of fans gathered outside, it was Jey Uso himself. The two men, once bitter rivals, walked side by side with expressions marked by gravity, not bravado. Phones were raised, flashes went off, and the internet had its next viral image: CM Punk and Jey Uso entering the hospital together to see Roman Reigns. This wasn't a backstage angle or a scripted reunion. It was something real, raw, and unfiltered. Punk's caption on social media later that night, "Family isn't always about blood," was simple, but its impact was seismic. Within minutes, the photo spread across the globe, sparking conversations about respect, loyalty, and humanity in a business often defined by conflict. A history of bad blood. To fully grasp why this moment stunned fans, you have to look back at the history. Punk and Roman's rivalry stretches back to 2012, when Punk was the reigning WWE champion and Roman was the enforcer of the Shield. Their clashes were physical, their words even more cutting. Punk dismissed Roman as a corporate puppet. Roman fired back by labeling Punk a relic of the past. The animosity didn't fade with time. Even after Punk's long hiatus and dramatic return to WWE in 2023, the tension remained. Jey Uso had his own battles with Punk, fueled by his devotion to the bloodline and Punk's refusal to show deference to Roman's dynasty. Their encounters were fierce, marked by high-flying counters, technical duels, and personal insults that seemed to deepen the divide. And yet, beneath the sharp words and violent matches, respect had quietly been building. Punk admired Roman's relentless work ethic, even if he never admitted it publicly. Roman respected Punk's uncanny ability to connect with fans. Jey, too, recognized in Punk a kind of warrior spirit that mirrored his own. These threads of respect, buried under years of rivalry, were the foundation for the hospital reunion. Inside the hospital room, those who were present inside the hospital that night described the scene with a reverence usually reserved for wrestling's most historic moments. Roman Reigns, lying in bed but awake, welcomed Jey first. Jey clasped his hand and whispered words of reassurance. Then the door opened and in walked CM Punk. For a split second, silence filled the room. Then, something shifted. Roman smiled faintly, a rare glimpse of vulnerability and recognition. Punk didn't speak much, but he didn't need to. His presence was enough. The three men spoke quietly for over an hour. According to staff who caught glimpses, the conversation wasn't about titles, matches, or future angles. It was about family, about children, about fears of being sidelined by injury, about what the grind of the industry takes from you. Laughter punctuated the seriousness at times, breaking the heaviness with reminders of shared humanity. For once, there was no kayfabe, no pretense, just three men, bound not by storyline but by mutual respect and concern. The viral photo that shook the WWE Universe. The world outside learned of this meeting when Punk posted a selfie on his social media accounts. The photo was grainy but powerful. Punk, Jay, and Roman, faint smiles on their faces, hospital equipment in the background. The caption read, "Family isn't always about blood. It's about who shows up when it matters most." Within minutes, the post had millions of likes, shares, and comments. Hashtags like #RainStrong, #FamilyFirst, and #WWE began trending worldwide. Fans called it the most human moment in wrestling history. The image cut through the noise of promos, rumors, and storylines, landing directly in the hearts of people who understood the weight of what they were seeing. This wasn't just a photo of wrestlers, it was a snapshot of vulnerability, loyalty, and compassion in an industry where those qualities are rarely seen publicly. Industry reactions. The reactions came fast and wide. Jon Moxley, Punk's longtime friend and Roman's former Shield brother, called it a wake-up call, reminding everyone that wrestling is brutal, but also rooted in respect. Becky Lynch praised Punk and Jay for showing that vulnerability is strength, saying in an interview, "We're not just characters, we're people, and people need each other." Seth Rollins, Roman's greatest rival and friend, tweeted simply, "This is bigger than wrestling." Even Triple H, often cautious in his public words, posted, "This is why I love this business. It's bigger than the ring for fans." The reactions confirmed what they already felt. This wasn't a gimmick, it was a cultural moment. It was proof that wrestling could offer glimpses of humanity that resonated beyond storylines. The ripple effect on WWE. The hospital reunion between Roman Reigns, CM Punk, and Jey Uso didn't just stop at the four walls of a recovery room. It spread across WWE like a shockwave, felt in boardrooms, locker rooms, arenas, and living rooms around the world. The first sign of its impact was commercial. Merchandise sales for Roman, Punk, and Jay spiked overnight. Punk's caption, "Family isn't always about blood," was quickly licensed, printed on shirts, and sold out within hours. Fans wore them proudly to live shows, turning arenas into seas of solidarity. Beyond the numbers, however, the energy at events shifted. Fans brought homemade signs with phrases like "Stronger Together" and "Family First." Chants of "Family, Family" broke out during matches, often unrelated to the three men involved, a reminder that the entire roster had been caught up in the aftershocks of one viral moment. What was once a locker room defined by scripted betrayals and feuds was suddenly reframed in the eyes of fans as a family. Fractured perhaps, but still bonded at its core. Internally, that perception seeped back into the wrestlers themselves. Superstars who had been publicly feuding on television showed more camaraderie backstage. Wellness initiatives, often spoken about but rarely prioritized, suddenly had more weight in conversations. For many within WWE, the reunion was a reminder that the business may thrive on conflict as entertainment, but behind it all are people navigating pressures, sacrifices, and bonds stronger than storyline. It was more than a one-off headline. It was shaping the very narrative of WWE's present and future. Breaker's silence. While the world buzzed about the reunion, one voice was conspicuously absent. Bron Breakkers. The man who delivered the fateful spear in Paris that left Roman sidelined offered no comment, no tweets, no interviews, no carefully staged promos. His silence became its own story. Was he planning another move, holding his words until he could make a statement in the ring? Or was he reflecting quietly on the ripple effect his match had inadvertently caused? Speculation filled the vacuum. Some fans believed the silence was strategic, a way to let Roman's story breathe before stepping back into the spotlight. Others suggested it was a rare act of respect, Breakker stepping aside so as not to overshadow the human moment that was unfolding. Either way, his absence from the conversation only heightened intrigue. In a business where every superstar is expected to have something to say, the lack of response spoke volumes. Breakker's silence became part of the mythology of the moment. Was he calculating his next move, or did he understand that sometimes the most powerful statement is to say nothing at all? A new standard for wrestling culture. Perhaps the most profound impact of this reunion lies not in numbers or storylines, but in the way it reframed wrestling culture itself. For decades, WWE and wrestling more broadly have thrived on betrayal, spectacle, and the blurring of lines between reality and fiction. But Punk and Jay walking into that hospital room reminded fans and peers alike that behind the characters and catchphrases are people. Roman, Punk, and Jay were not just performers that night. They were fathers, cousins, brothers, and men carrying the scars of a demanding industry. Their reunion sparked something deeper, a conversation about what it means to be part of wrestling's family. Stars like Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins echoed the sentiment in interviews and podcasts, praising the vulnerability displayed. Becky, always candid, remarked that, "It's okay to be human. Wrestling doesn't take that away from us." Younger talents, often caught up in the relentless chase for screen time, began to share stories of support systems, wellness, and the importance of bonds that extend beyond kayfabe. The reunion created a new model, one where compassion is not weakness but strength, where moments of humanity can inspire fans as much as any five-star match. In a culture that often prizes toughness above all else, Punk and Jay's visit to Roman showed that empathy could be just as powerful a storyline. What comes next? The question of what comes next now hangs over WWE like a tantalizing possibility. Roman's recovery is expected to keep him out until WrestleMania season, and already speculation is running wild about whether Punk and Jay will stand beside him when he returns. Could this hospital reunion plant the seeds of a new alliance, a coalition of respect and loyalty aimed at Bron Breakker and those who align with him? Could it reshape the WWE main event scene, forcing management to pivot toward a story of unity rather than rivalry? Or was it simply a fleeting human moment, destined to live outside the boundaries of television angles? The uncertainty is part of what makes the reunion so captivating. Fans are left wondering if they'll see the echoes of that hospital room play out in the ring, or if the story remains a cherished piece of wrestling folklore. What is undeniable is that, whether or not it is scripted into future programming, the moment has already changed the way fans perceive the characters and the men behind them. Legacy of the reunion. In the end, the hospital reunion wasn't about championship belts, WrestleMania main events, or corporate planning. It was about showing up. Punk and Jay didn't just visit Roman. They reminded the world that wrestling, despite its chaos and theatrics, is ultimately about loyalty, respect, and family. Roman Reigns may have been physically broken in that hospital bed, but emotionally, he was surrounded by strength. Punk's words, "Family isn't always about blood," will echo in wrestling history, not because they were a clever soundbite, but because they were true. They distilled the essence of what wrestling's greatest moments have always been about: connection. Fans will remember the night rivals became allies, when the facade of kayfabe slipped away, and when humanity stepped into the spotlight. The reunion will stand not as a footnote, but as a chapter in WWE's story, one that will be retold for years as an example of the industry's rare but powerful capacity to remind us that behind the glitz and glamour lies something very real. In that Paris hospital room, the world saw wrestling at its most authentic, not in a scripted finish, but in the simple act of presence. And that legacy may prove to be more enduring than any championship reign.